At 20 years old, I've made over six figures. Not from crypto, not from a tech startup, and not from selling anything online. I made six figures from becoming an electrician. Whenever people hear that, they usually pause for a second because the picture most people have in their minds of the trades does not include wealth. When people talk about wealth, they talk about tech founders, they talk about stock market investors, they talk about doctors and lawyers and hedge fund managers and startup founders. But the trades almost never get mentioned in that conversation. And that is exactly why I call them the back door to wealth. Because while everyone is figuring out how to go through the front door, the back door is wide open. Let me explain to you what I mean. Most people grow up hearing the same life plan: graduate high school, go to college, get a degree, get a job. You see, that's the front door. And millions of people try to walk you through that front door every single day. Thousands of students graduating with the same degrees, thousands of applicants competing for the same jobs, people taking on debt just to enter the race. And for some people, that plan works out. But what most people never realize is that there are industries where demand is extremely high and the competition is much lower, and the skills involved are incredibly valuable. That industry is the skilled trades: electricians, plumbers, HVAC technicians, carpenters, construction workers, heavy machine operators. These are the people who build and maintain the infrastructure of modern life. Every building you walk into depends on electricity. Every home depends on plumbing. Every office building depends on heating and cooling systems. Factories, hospitals, schools, restaurants, all of them depend on infrastructure that the skilled trades install and maintain. Without tradesmen and tradeswomen, the entire system would stop. See, here's what most people don't realize: there's a massive shortage of these workers. A lot of tradesmen who entered these industries decades ago, they reaching retirement age. Electricians with 30 years of experience are leaving the workforce. Plumbers who built careers over decades are retiring. Contractors who ran businesses for years are stepping away. But the number of young people entering these trades is so much smaller than it used to be. Why? Because for the last 30 to 40 years, society has been pushing one message over and over and over again: go to college, get a degree, work in an office. Meanwhile, the industries that are actually building the world, they losing workers faster than they can replace them, which means the value of these skills is rising. And that is where the opportunity lies, because wealth doesn't start with money, it starts with income. And income starts with a skill. And if you don't have a skill that the world values, it is very, very hard to build that financial stability. But when you have a skill that people need, and that earning power increase. And the trades are full of those kind of skills. Another advantage that the trade have that people rarely talk about is speed. Think about that traditional college path for a second. Somebody graduate high school, 18 years old. Then they spend 4 years in college. They graduate at 22. If they wasn't a good student, they do 23. And only then do they begin earning income full time. Meanwhile, somebody entering a skilled trade, they earn and they learn so much more earlier. They start developing skills right away. They start building that income sooner. And time matters, because time is the only thing that you do not get more of. The earlier you start investing, the earlier you start building assets, the better you become. Time is one of the most powerful forces in wealth building. And the trades give people so much of their time back. But where the conversation really gets interesting is the trades don't just create workers, the trades are create entrepreneurs. Look around almost any city. You go see electrical companies, plumbing companies, HVAC companies, roofing companies, construction companies. All of these businesses started with somebody who learned a trade, someone who spent a significant amount of time learning how the work actually gets done, someone who built relationships in the industry, someone who even realized that they could start their own company. Service businesses are some of the most powerful businesses a person can build. Why? Because they solve problems for people to fix, that people have to fix. If electricity goes out in the building, it has to be fixed. If the plumbing fails, it has to be fixed. If the heating system stops working in the winter, that has to be fixed. This stuff ain't optional. This is necessary. This is essential. And businesses that solve essential, necessary problems are going to be the ones that grow, are going to be the ones that generate that steady income. Now, imagine someone who learns a trade and builds that experience over time. Imagine they increase their income as their skill level improves. They develop in relationships with contractors and clients, and then they eventually start their own business. Instead of trading hours for income, they run in projects, hiring teams, and managing jobs. That business becomes another asset, and assets are what always create wealth. I tell you, one of the biggest misunderstandings people have about wealth is thinking that it comes from that one big moment. Man, they imagine hitting that lotto, they imagine a lucky investment, a viral business idea, a viral video. But in reality, wealth is for most people, it's so much simpler. It's just consistency, consistent income, consistent saving, consistent investing. And that's why the trades will always quietly outperform a lot of these career paths. Because when you develop a skill that society depends on, your income becomes so much more stable. And stability is one of the most underrated advantages in wealth building. All right, look, now let's think about it for a second. The economy is changing constantly. The industries will rise and fall. Companies hire and lay people off, but infrastructure will never disappear. That building is always going to need power. That home is always going to need plumbing. That factory is still going to need those electrical systems. That hospital is definitely going to need that HVAC. And the systems that make modern life work are always going to exist. And the system needs people who knows how to install, repair, and maintain them every single day. This is something that is valuable because it has demand. And when demand is high for a skill, the value of that skill will increase. And that is exactly what's happening right now in many trades. For years, fewer young people that entered these industries. At the same time, older workers began retiring, younger people stopped coming, and that created a gap. But whenever there's a gap between supply and demand, that opportunity will appear because the world still needs the work to get done. Something else people don't talk about as much anymore is that when you're learning a trade, you're not just learning a job. You're learning a problem solving skill. I'm an electrician. I solve electrical problems, plumbers, water system problems, crappy problems, HVAC technicians, heating and cooling problems, contractors, building problems. And problem solving skills are valuable because a problem will never stop existing. The more complicated the world is becoming, the more valuable we are. Look at this AI, data centers, solar. Another thing is how important income leverage is. It is powerful to earn a consistent income over time because not only income alone creates wealth, all of this stuff gives you opportunity. This income is going to give you the ability to save. This income is going to give you the ability to invest. This income is going to give you the ability to take risks when opportunity appears. And when somebody develops a valuable trade skill, your income will increase as your experience does. A first year, you might earn one level of income. But a journeyman, you earning a whole nother level. And don't let you be a master electrician, you earning even more. The earning potential increases because the skill level increases, and that's how most trade career works. Your independence will increase as your skill increases. Eventually, you won't need permission from anyone to wire that up. You won't need permission from a company. You won't need permission from a boss. You're not going to need permission from an organization. When you have a skill that people need, you don't have to answer to anybody. You can work for who you want. You can work on whatever projects you want to work on, and you can work independently. I want to eventually start a business. I want to eventually move into management. I want to specialize in different areas of my trade because I know that that flexibility will always give me control, and control is powerful. Because when somebody controls their skill, they control their ability to earn. I'm about to give y'all some game on another hidden advantage of the trade. You get that real world knowledge. When you work in the trade, you actually get to see how things get built. You understand the systems. You understand the infrastructure. You understand how the buildings work behind the walls. And that knowledge changes the way you see opportunity. It's not just the back door to wealth. You actually looking at the back door. You see the buildings and you see the mystery behind them. You see the electrical systems, the plumbing systems, the structural components, the mechanical systems. You understand how it all functions. When you evaluate a property, you have the advantage because you can identify the problem. You can estimate a repair. You can understand the true condition of a building. And that kind of knowledge is extremely valuable when you start thinking about investing. Again, wealth is built through assets. And one of the most common assets people pursue is property. Something interesting that I'm seeing is that a lot of people in the trades eventually realize that they're surrounded by opportunity every single day. You're working on these construction sites, you're working on these renovations, you're working on these developments, you're seeing how these projects are getting built, you're seeing how the money flows through these projects, literally millions of dollars, and sometimes you start asking different questions. You start saying, what if I own this project? You start saying, what if I own this building? You start saying, what if I own this company? But that's when the mindset shifts from worker to entrepreneur. But it starts with the skill. You have to get in the door first. That skill will create that income, and the income will create the leverage, and that leverage will create the opportunity to pursue larger goals. Now, let me be clear about this. These trades ain't easy, nor is this a shortcut. This will require work. It would require discipline. It would require learning. It will require showing up when it's cold, when it's hot, when the job is difficult. But those challenges will always build something valuable. It will build work ethic, and work ethic compounds over time. The same discipline that someone learns trying to learn a trade is the same discipline that you're going to need to build a business. It's the same discipline that you're going to need to master some investments. And that same mindset will help people solve problems on the job site just like it will in life. Why do you think so many people that succeed outside the trade are successful? Because they have a strong foundation. They didn't develop the skills. They didn't develop the discipline. They didn't develop the resilience. And those qualities carry into absolutely everything that they pursue. Most people never even see this path. Most people are never even exposed to it. You grow up hearing about college. You grow up hearing about corporate careers and office jobs, but nobody really explains how the trades can be a foundation for wealth. You rarely see somebody talking about the trades and entrepreneur opportunities. You rarely see somebody talking about how skilled workers can build assets. You rarely see somebody telling you that that lack of exposure is the real problem, because when people don't see a path, they don't walk down it. That is why this matters. One perspective can change the direction of somebody's life. Somebody might need to hear about the trades to realize it's a real opportunity. You can build a skill instead of debt. You can use your career as a foundation from something bigger, and that is the real message here. The trades are not just jobs. The trades are a platform. And that platform can lead to entrepreneurship. That platform can lead to investing. That platform can lead to financial independence that we all deserve. But it starts with the skill. And at some point, something interesting happens to a lot of people who spend enough time in the trades. You're going to stop looking at that work. You start looking at the business behind it. Like I said earlier, you start asking the right questions. At first, you might be focused on learning that skill. You might be focused on learning how to wire. You might be focused on learning how to install that system, learning how to troubleshoot, learning how the job site works. But you give it a few years, that same years that you would have spent in college, and I promise you, you're going to start noticing something that people never even think about. You start noticing how you can be undeniable. As I said earlier, you start seeing how the money flows through a job site. But you need the foundation. You need the foundation. The trades are one of the most common pipelines into entrepreneurship. One of the most common pipelines. And if you're ready to learn how to get into the trades without college and without debt, the link in the description down below is to the Blue Collar Academy. Eventually, you're going to get your license. You need people around you who are trying to achieve the same things that you are trying to achieve. You need weekly coaching and accountability. The Blue Collar Academy provides all of that. It's time to be undeniable. It's time to stop being undesirable and start living. That wealth is going to come for you. All you need is that skill to make it happen.